Okay, so my name's Manny LaCarrubba. As I was just saying, I was, one of the guys, a handful of guys that Jason Serranis was in that group. As a matter of fact, I was just trying to break in as a reviewer. At any rate, so I've been at this a long time. I've been in professional audio essentially my whole life. And big fan of calibration. I'm a loudspeaker designer. My main claim to fame is I've invented a special waveguide that is extremely wide dispersion to high frequencies. And Bang & Olufsen used that. And so if you look at your weird little thing that either comes out of the dashboard, Audi or some of their loudspeakers, you'll see my handiwork. So what we're here to do today is to go through the process of calibrating these loudspeakers, and 2 thumbs up for the digital processing to do all that. So of course we all know that loudspeakers need to have filters, right? We need to have crossovers to keep the lows to the woofer and the highs to the tweeter and all that. And how we do that is of some importance, of great importance even. And what we're always after, or should always be after, is good smooth frequency response, right? What's that mean? So frequency, everybody knows what frequency response? No? Let's make this interactive. You, sir, what is frequency response?
It's the linearity or the absence of the linearity over a frequency spectrum of a particular comp.
Yeah, well said. It's, how loud the individual frequencies are. Some attenuated, some accentuated. We generally don't want that. You may deviate, so when we say flat frequency response, we mean that the curve on the screen will be relatively flat. And there are some occasions when you want that, and there are some occasions where you do not want that. And that target curve, what we would call it, is also of great importance. So at any rate, when you're setting up the crossovers, it has to be done in an anechoic environment. Like you can't do it in a room. Because when you measure a loudspeaker, we have to let a certain amount of time go by. So this is basic Fourier analysis stuff, right? Is everybody familiar with fast Fourier analysis? We certainly look at the charts and graphs that such analyzers produce a lot. They're, stereophile produces, it's all Fourier analysis, which taking a complex signal, breaking it down into its frequency components, and producing a chart of the amplitude and phase. And if you combine those back together, you get the complex signal that you started with. So it's a way to analyze signals. So we put in a test signal. In this case, today I'm going to be using a swept sine wave, right? So the sine wave sweeps we do a little math to derive or to convolve an impulse response. Everybody know what an impulse response is? No? Anybody know impulse response? Know what that is? Well, it's just what you might think it is. It's a very brief impulse of sound. Ideally, no decay, right? It's there and it's gone. And the shorter it is, the higher the frequency content, that it has. The problem with using so in that, if you put an impulse response into a device, you can do a Fourier transform on it directly. The problem is there's no energy in it. It's like, some fractions of a millisecond or measured in nanoseconds wide and at very high. So it's very easy to clip amplifiers and electronics with the high spike. And it has no width on the screen. It has no duration in time. And so while you can, if you're measuring electronics, it's fine because you don't need time to, you need time to go by, but you don't have noise and acoustics and other confounding factors that would corrupt the measurement. But when we measure loudspeakers, we've got sound emits from the loudspeakers, it hits stuff in the environment and combines with the direct sound, and you get the mush at the microphone. And if you're trying to set the device up, this loudspeaker up, for its initial condition, you need to remove the confounding factors, which would be the room, right? So if I were to do a complete design of this system, I'd have to take it to my shop where I have a quasi-anechoic space with big foam wedges on the floor and ceiling, and I can have really good anechoic measurements down to at least 300 hertz or so. Yeah.
The speaker itself is affecting sending those impulses or everything else. I mean, you've got the wood, you've got the enclosure.
Yeah, because the drivers, of course, will excite everything around it. It excites the walls or the glass, and then they'll radiate sound and all that.
So how do you deal with, when you're building a speaker, how do you deal with those aspects?
Oh,
As inert as possible.
well, inert is possible, but there's a point of diminishing returns. So Wilson Audio, we're all familiar with that company. They build these crazy stout boxes. Magico, also local company. Wilson used to be a local company. They overbuild their boxes because they need to sell something. But there's a point at which if you build the box very flimsy, it of course will radiate a lot of sound, and you want all the sound to be radiated by the drivers, not the box so much. The box will vibrate a little bit, and because it has a large surface area, you can't tolerate too much of the box vibrating, but building it out of 1-inch aluminum is probably a little excessive, Yes.
How about the published response curves for each driver?
For each driver?
Yeah, can you use those
For
to design your crossover?
no. Hell no, actually. Let me put a qualifier on that. Never trust manufacturer's data, and then when you put it in your box, it's going to modify, and you've designed your box around some set of parameters. This is a dipole, very different than if we put it in a wide baffle box, narrow baffle box, short, tall. It's all that will affect how the driver performs, and and diffraction effects that cannot be gotten rid of. These edges are going to diffract sound, right? So what that means when I say diffract, the wave launches from the driver, it expands out, and when it hits a sharp edge, this edge acts like a new radiating source, right? Which is why loudspeakers generally have nice curved edges, because it mitigates that effect to a certain degree. So at any rate, I'm going to just take the crossovers as like somebody did a good job, and we'll move on from there. I'm tempted to bring a mic and put it a little closer. So here's the problem with measuring speakers in rooms. If you're trying to get at what the speaker is doing, you got to remove the reflections off the floor and the sidewalls and the ceiling, and otherwise you're measuring, they get gelled together, or what's the right word? They blend together, I guess, or add together, and you cannot separate them out. You cannot tell what is the room and what is in the loudspeaker itself. And you want to put, the ear, however, is not a microphone. So the ear can differentiate direct sound from reflected sound to a degree. To a degree. So anybody read Floyd Toole's book on sound? Not enough hands have gone up. Everybody go by. It's in its fifth or sixth edition now. What is it? Sound Reproduction, it's called, by Floyd Toole. And I think for this latest one, he let some of his proteges write several chapters, Floyd Toole, Sean Olive, and Todd Welty. Great guys. At any rate, you need to read that. It will teach you everything you need to know about how loudspeakers interact with rooms and what's important and that kind of stuff. It can get a little deep. You can skip over stuff, glean from it what you will. At any rate, I highly recommend it. So at any rate, you cannot separate the speaker from the room with a measurement at that mic position. Now because what happens is it takes a certain amount of time for the wave to get here, and then a slightly longer time for that floor bounce, which would be the first reflection in this condition would be tweeter to floor to mic, right? because the wavelengths are so short for the tweeter, and this one's crossed over, what, 6K, I think you said, Jim, right? Which is very high. I probably wouldn't go that high, but whatever. That means that I need like a half a millisecond of time to go by to have a few cycles of the wave hit the microphone capsule. So I can easily window out. And you'll see this on the computer display. As a matter of fact, let's just start this. Here's what we're going to do. What I'm going to do is make a measurement of the tweeter. All right, and show you how I can window out, and I can actually get a measurement of the tweeter because it's working at such a high frequency and the wavelengths are so short that I can do that. But as the wavelengths get longer, I can't let enough cycles of the wave go by the microphone capsule before the confounding reflections blend in and some with, and then I can't tease it apart anymore. So what I'm doing here, I'm gonna make my first measurement, save individual measurements, do not generate, yes, we'll generate an overall, use group averages. So here's, let's talk a little bit about how we calibrate rooms. I gotta move very fast, sorry. Always multi-microphone. So when you're measuring the speaker for design purposes, one microphone suffices. You pick your reference axis, generally on axis to the tweeter. My loudspeakers I do a little differently because of the waveguide. Makes it a little more interesting. Let's just leave it at that. And then you measure at various off-axis frequencies, because you need the direct sound. The most important thing is good flat frequency response leaves the speaker on the reference axis and hits your ear. That is the most important factor in determining how you think the speaker sounds. And when the reference curve is flat or very close to flat, most people say that sounds best, right? This is all double-blind listening trials, which are frequently expensive and time-consuming to do. It might be fun to do that one time. If you guys want to spend like a day, and it will take a day to do like a proper blind trial, it's an interesting experience. You won't want to do it again. It's not as exciting as it sounds, but they're very time consuming and everybody leaves disappointed because your ears aren't as good as you think they are. Just that's where it ends up every time. So at any rate, where was I now? I was saying when we measure the speaker in an anechoic space for calibration, when we're designing the speaker to set up the crossovers. If we've got digital EQ, we can actually get in and take care of some of the driver resonances that are almost always going to be there, and you can really get nice linear response. But then we have to care about the off-axis response. That's the second most important thing, the first floor bounce. Well, what's the spectrum of that? The first bounce off of the wall that comes back over here, what's the spectrum of that? Off of this, that all is very important, and that's what separates really, just good loudspeakers from great loudspeakers, is that the sound power of the loudspeaker becomes flatter and smoother. Sound power is the total energy radiated from the speaker. So when we measure sound power, we measure at least 35 measurements all the way around, right? 10-degree increments, and then all the way this way. There's a couple of duplicates. You end up with 70 measurements. You have to weight them a special way and average them together, and you get a curve. And that's like the total sound that the speaker's putting into the room. The flatter and smoother that is, generally the better. In a conventional loudspeaker, it will have a downward slope. This is not a conventional loudspeaker. So you, sir, in the front row, What is uniquely different about a dipole? There's a couple of things that are uniquely different about a dipole loudspeaker. Do you know, can you name one, or like what's
I guess the sound out of the back.
the sound out of the back? What does that mean? Anybody?
That's out of phase.
It is out of phase. All right, so what's the implication of that?
Cancellation on the.
Cancellation to the sides, right?
You got a figure eight pattern.
You've got a figure of eight. You've got a figure of eight pattern, right? And this is also well down into the low frequencies. There's no monopole subwoofer going with this, right? It's a dipole all the way down. So that means a lot of energy is being taken out of the room. If there was a box around this at low frequency, low frequencies, it would be omnidirectional. But now we're canceling like half of that energy. And so one of the reasons I love dipoles is that they have flatter sound power curves. Tweeter's going to do what the tweeter's going to do. As a matter of fact, he's added this one in the back to give even more high frequency energy into the room, which will lift the sound power at the highest frequencies. And because half of the bass is canceled, it's a very inefficient way to produce bass. But you're putting half the bass into the room, and you're not exciting room modes, which is a whole other discussion. Save that for another day. But it gives you a flatter sound power. So they have this sort of open, not like sound coming out of a box quality because of that. All loudspeakers generally have a downward sloping sound power. I could show you some of these curves because I have data on my computer, but in the interest of keeping this moving. So that's that. Now in a room, and when I come and calibrate like a recording studio or somebody's home listening setup or a dub stage for film or whatever, always multi-microphones. You have to have some sort of spatial averaging. If I were doing a cinema, I'd probably space the mics quite far apart and get sort of a generalized average of the microphones across some central seating area, right? For hi-fi use, I tend to cluster the mics much more closely together because somebody always wants it to be the best it can be in the sweet spot, right? And then to the extent the loudspeaker is very good and has good dispersion off axis, that will maintain. To the extent that it's not, then suffer, right? So this is true of all optimization processes. You can optimize for one condition at the expense of the others. So this is a little further apart than I usually do for like a home listening or a recording studio where it needs to be the best it can be in one spot because this is usually gets listened to with a group, so I'm sort of splitting the difference there. So we average those and we look and see what the room is doing, see how the loudspeaker behaves, and then there's a set of rules that I have personally developed for my work to calibrate the loudspeaker to the room. The biggest problems are always in the bass. This room will not have problems in the bass. The windows are open, the ceiling is freaking 20 feet up, the room is 40 feet long. Not like my living room, at all. So we're not going to have a lot of the problems of bass problems, room modes, right? We all know about standing waves, room modes. Not going to get into it, but this room is not going to have it. And look at all the giant furniture we have in here, which add diffusion. So I was talking to somebody earlier about the sound of this room. So the room is too reverberant for good audiophile playback, just full stop, right? It's too much reverb. Reverb is the enemy of hi-fi, of good audio reproduction. In a live concert, there's some other rules apply, but the room has a lot of diffusion, which is to say it's very broken up. There's no opportunity for big, strong reflections except for those big flat areas above the window, and they're far enough away that not a problem. There's just a ton of stuff in here. And look at the ceiling. It's peaked, which will concentrate bass a little bit down the center, but not bad. And there's a fair number of of structural members up there, break sound up a little bit. It would be useful to put a bunch of acoustical panels up on the ceiling and perhaps over the windows to just bring some of this reverb down. But if you're going to have reverb, at least it's diffuse and decent sounding reverb. So let's start and make a measurement because you're getting bored. I can tell. I'm going to go capture noise floor. Left, I'm going to do the left speaker only. Let's see what we get here. Okay. Yeah, that wasn't loud enough. So the analyzer is telling me it really wasn't loud enough. So this is where, for those of you who know REW and want to learn it better, this is where you set up multiple mic inputs. You have to pay an extra $100. Give them 1,000 because this program is worth it. But it's a donation-only thing. Highly recommend it. If you're interested in sound, you can start playing around with measurement quite cost-effectively. Let me just remove those and try this again. This time I want, yes, 1 to 4, and we need more level. Let's give it another, oh, I don't know, 5 dB. So what the analyzer did was give me the response at each of those 4 mic locations. And I kind of wanted an average of those, and I don't have it. But so at this stage, I just want to make sure that nothing looks stupid. One of the biggest problems in sound is that you can't see it, right? So it's easy to think you're doing something, and you're either doing something else or or not doing the thing at all. And, every recording engineer has had, old school recording engineer like me, has had the experience of going over there and tweaking the high frequencies on the vocal till it's just right, and then realize they didn't hit the on button. And you're like, ooh. Because our hearing is incredibly fickle, incredibly fickle. We ascribe to our hearing the stability and memory of our other senses, and it simply is not so. And this is why there's such a thing as an audiophile, because you get fooled.
And you can't bring in a dog to communicate with you about what these people.
Well, I don't know what, their perceptual mechanisms are like, but we are highly suggestible. We ascribe things to things. Like if you have a great video image, you will judge the sound to be better than if the video was poor, if you're looking at sound and picture. For instance, dark speakers sound better than light speakers. If you stain those, everybody will say they sound better. It's human, it's what we do. Period. So don't tell me what you can hear in a piece of wire. Not that I'm biased, but anyway, definitely not have no biases there. It's pure science, actually. So we're seeing a nice grouping. That looks reasonable to me. No one microphone is off in the weeds, so I can proceed. Yes?
What smoothing are you using in this?
I'm using right now like 1/24th octave. Let's check that. And I should I'll set this up. This is undoubtedly set up for, what am I doing? Analysis. So right now I'm defaulting to, this is a 15 cycle frequency dependent window is what I'm using with no smoothing. So let me describe what that is. See where the checkbox that says, up there, add frequency dependent window towards the left under Blackman-Harris? Okay, 15 cycles. What that's saying is for every data point that it's going to collect, right? And it's collecting I have the box that says 96 PPO. That's points per octave. So I'm collecting 96 data points for each octave, and it stays. So there's 96 between 0 and between 20 and 40, and 96 between 10 kilohertz and 20 kilohertz. If I didn't check that box, I'd have 10,000 data points between 10K and 20K, which would be half of all the data for the most useless portion of the. So that's a way to just keep it sane on the data requirements. What the 15 cycles is for, that's what I use when I'm measuring in my lab, right? If I take that off here, just for fun, so now that we know we're making good measurements, let me delete that. Yes, delete. I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to turn off. Now I don't want to see generate an overall RMS, and I do not want individual measurements. And I do want to see the RMS average and use the average of the group. So let's make a measurement of that again. Okay, so that's the average of those measurements for the left speaker. Okay, now let me go and look at the impulse. Oh, I can't look at an impulse for an average, of course, dummy. Okay, let me collect some more data. This time because I want you guys to see an impulse response. So I'm going to turn this back on. And I'm going to go, let's just for fun go to the right speaker. And we'll run the response on the right speaker. There we go. Now we're looking at an impulse response. What are we looking at? We did the mathematics to turn the swept sine wave into an impulse. But that doesn't look like what I described earlier, does it? It's been smeared in time. That's got all the reflections, the phase shift because drivers are not perfect, the phase shift because we've got crossover filters, there's room reflections in that. It's not too many room reflections because I've only got a 15 cycle window, and I'll describe that in a second. And you see that curve there? That's how much of the data I'm going to look at. So right where the impulse, where the direct sound hits the microphone and the chart goes crazy, right? I'm weighting that data 100%. See it on the left side, that scale is in percentage weighting to make that frequency response plot. And then we tail it off, and we count as time goes on, we're getting more and more of the room. But we're also getting lower and lower in frequency because a 50 hertz wave is about how long?
50 feet.
No.
No, half that, 20.
20 feet. About 20 feet, 50 feet. 50 feet is like 20 hertz.
20, okay.
20 hertz would be like 50 feet. And 50 hertz would be like, I don't know, 20 something feet. So I gotta wait a long time. That's like 20 milliseconds to let a wave go by. At 1 kilohertz, it's 1 millisecond. I only need a millisecond to get a full wave cycle at 1K, so I can wait a couple of milliseconds easily before the first reflection. So I can make a pretty good measurement above a kilohertz without having an anechoic chamber, and as long as the mic's not too far from the speaker, all that. But it gets harder and harder, and I also, that doesn't mean that high frequencies can't bounce off a wall, hit the microphone, and if I have that window open too wide, if that it's a cosine curve, is wide enough, I'll start letting high frequency bounces that are occurring much later in time correct my corrupt my frequency response measure even at higher frequencies where I'm telling you it's easier to measure correctly. But you got to know all this stuff and set it all up correctly in order to believe the line on the screen. And this is the big problem that I see when, you can get REW for free and you can buy one of these mics for, $70 on Sweetwater or any Amazon, whatever. They're not expensive and they actually work quite well. Good omnidirectional mics. I wouldn't use them for recording, but for this kind of work, it's absolutely fine. My lead mic, just for people who are curious, is a much more expensive microphone. This is an Earthworks. It's flat to 40 kilohertz, and that's quite a nice microphone and sounds really good on acoustic guitar.
Are they particularly omnidirectional?
Yes, the Earthworks is especially very omnidirectional and very consistent. You're paying money for that. And the flatness of the response. I do have a correction curve for it. And then what I've done is I use my very expensive mic as a reference with its correction curve that came from the factory as a correction to cross-calibrate my less expensive mic. So I set up a good, and it's always up in the high frequencies. Just about all mics are good at the low end. Set up a tweeter or something in my shop and measure it with the good mic, and then come up with a calibration curve that makes the other microphones measure just like that. And so that's just cross. And it's I couldn't use that in a court of law, but I don't do that kind of work. I don't care, right? And then before you guys got here, I calibrated all these with a microphone calibrator so that, the same signal in would give the same sound pressure level reading out so that it's actually calibrated. So at any rate, that's what the impulse response looks like. Now, what I want to do, and I'm much slower on REW these days because he made a massive change to the interface, and now I can't find anything. So, give me a second. I would love.
Modern technology.
It's like I was so fast at this, and it's utterly, completely different. And it is the curse of upgrades. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm glad to have the. Oh, this is an interesting plot. This is showing the deviation between the microphones. All right. So up here, interestingly, some of the biggest changes are down around 2. Where are the crossover points?
120, 1000.
120, 1000, and 6K. Yeah, it gets a little squirrely around 200 hertz there at the bottom end of this driver's passband. But it's fabulously consistent in the bass, which I predicted it would be. And the mics aren't really that far apart either. But still, that's pretty good. It's very consistent in the bass, which goes along with the fact that the room is good for bass. Yeah.
Any sense for what's causing that narrow band dip at around 250 or whatever it is? Is that an issue? Is that speaker issue? Is that hard to say?
Do you remember what I said earlier? It is impossible to tease the two apart. It is probably
It's right around the Schrader frequency, right?
What?
It's right around the Schrader frequency, right? Probably.
Of this room?
Oh, maybe even below the Schrader frequency. Above, I guess.
Above. For this room, above.
It's going to be really low.
Yeah, it's going to be relatively low in this room, and I don't think that.
Okay.
Well, there's the critical. I'm thinking more in terms of critical distance is going to be really short. Right, you don't have to get very far from the loudspeaker before room reflections swamp in level the direct sound from the loudspeaker because the room's quite reverberant. And at any rate, that's pretty good, by the way. It's gonna this loudspeaker is gonna we've got a bump there around 60 hertz that we're gonna want to look at, and we're gonna let's see. Let me do this. Go to here, and let me get rid of. All right, so so I want to turn that off, that off, that off. Those are the individual mics, and then Turn that on. That's left and right loudspeakers. And I think the left one is the red speaker from earlier. So they're reasonably well matched. Reasonably well matched. Left speaker's red, because that was the earlier measurement. Right, yeah. Right speaker's got that. I like the bass response of the left speaker better. Right, it's a little flatter. And bass is the most important. So when it comes to the attributes of sound that are considered, there's a laundry list of things: low frequency extension, high frequency extension, distortion levels, basic loudness, frequency response, of course, power response, sound power response. But the performance of the bass is the most important. When you put that soup together, and contemporary of mine works for Harman quite some years ago, put together an algorithm where you could make a measurement of a speaker in an anechoic chamber, and based on their huge amount of data from listening trials over time, he was able to come up with an algorithm to tell you with quite high accuracy how people would judge that loudspeaker to sound in a room. Right, so you don't actually have to listen to it, which is expensive and time consuming. The problem is, when anybody ever saw the JBL lab, the score went down because it just said JBL on it. If they changed out the badging to some other brand, the score would go up.
Suggestion.
Power suggestion, and I'll say it again, our hearing is far and away our most fickle sense. You can't hear.
To this up here.
Yeah, most of the changes when we change stuff, it's between the ears, not out in front of the ears. Yes, you guys back there.
So when you're saying this, when you're looking at this response and saying this is like a good response,
Yeah, for just.
when I look at this, there are a lot of wide dips that seem, but
Oh yeah, no, it can be improved.
and it generally, what do you look for a good response versus a bad?
Okay.
With
Yeah.
depth, those are generally things that are problematic, right?
Yeah, things that are so that, like, let's zero in on the blue curve for a second. So both the red and the blue curve at about 170 hertz there in the red curve, you've got a narrow notch, and then at about 260 hertz there in the blue curve, you've got a narrow notch. Mostly inaudible. Looks bad. There's a strong temptation to grab a narrow band EQ and try to fix it. It might, but.
Well, what about the top end where you're seeing this dip down and then it's raising, it's raising up towards the end, and it's quite wide?
Yeah, that's a problem.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's what to worry about. Yeah, you're right. The high end is a little goofed up, without a doubt, yes.
So maybe a little bit be more specific, because I'm actually measuring those just built. Are you looking at like a deviation, like let's just take 75, are you looking at a deviation of 5 degrees or 70 and go up and down, or is it?
Wait, say that again. You're looking at what now?
Like where's the baseline? Is it?
Oh.
Like which one?
Yeah.
That's how you think of it, that's a plus minus, or?
Yeah. I could develop, you could put a line on the screen that's a target, and REW, of course, has an EQ optimizer, so you can take these curves, bring it into the optimizer portion of the software. I haven't touched it in years, but it works really well. I remember it working well, and I'm sure it's only gotten better over time. And you have to develop a target. Like, what are you going for? Like, what's your average level? And you'll make that flat, or you can, I believe, bring in other targets. Because for in-room response, when you measure a loudspeaker in a room, you want generally a downward slope. Measure it in an anechoic chamber, you want it to be relatively flat, straight across, left to right. But in a room, this whole region between like 500 to like 4 or 5K, that's pretty good. That's about, like, you want like a dB per octave between 100 hertz roughly and 10 kilohertz. So, 6, 7 dB offset smooth from roughly 100 to roughly 10K, I find generally works pretty well. It depends on the directivity of the loudspeaker. So it's not a one size fits all. And, I've been doing this for 35 years. And I tend to forget how hard it was in the beginning, but I went years making perfectly useless measurements not knowing, right? It wasn't free. I had to spend thousands of dollars on Melissa, was the software that I learned on. And I had to buy a B&K mic because there was no, $70 mic from Amazon in the early 90s when I was starting, or late 80s even. So does that answer your question on?
I think so. Maybe I'm going to say something. Tell me if that dip, the one that's 170, was wider.
Well, I'm sorry, at 170, yeah.
Take the 170 dip. If that was more in the 70 to 100 hertz range, that would be more problematic, right? Based on your comment, the bases.
Yeah.
The width was quite.
If the width was wide.
Yeah, if the Q, it's called Q, quality factor, is how we measure resonances. So you see the blue hump at 60 hertz there. That's a moderate Q to somewhat high Q resonance. These notches at 160 and 260 or whatever they are, those are quite high Q. The broadband dip in that blue curve centered on about 7 kilohertz, that's a relatively low Q. Do you follow? Low Q means broad. It covers a lot of frequencies. And even a 1 or 2 dB variation that covers 3 octaves, you're going to hear that. Whereas you can have a very high Q resonance which of course is very narrow, that might be 6, 7, 8 dB and you can't hear it. And so part of the process is to be able to separate that out. Now there's a tool in REW that allows me to put something on the screen that more carefully matches or more accurately matches, in my estimation, what we hear. So I'm going to make a few changes here to my settings. I want to, first of all, what are we calling the organization these days? San Francisco Audiophile Society?
Audiophile Foundation.
Audiophile Foundation. AFF. Yeah, non-geographic, whatever. AFF in California Historical Radio Society, and we'll just go with that. And we'll call that that. And sweep length, we're going to do that. Where can I change? I can't change it here? I guess not. All right, hold on. I'm going to go into my settings here. Analysis. So where I see where my cursor is, add frequency dependent window. Because we're in a room, we're calibrating the room. We have, if we ever get to it, if I don't stop talking, we need to let some of the room influence the measurement. And so I'm going to do that by increasing the frequency dependent window. And I'm going to max it out and put it at 35 cycles. So now 35 cycles of any given data point frequency, has to go by before it puts a
15 before, so you were going 15 to 35?
That's correct. So now the curve is going to look much smoother because I don't need to catch those high Q resonances so much. You can't even hear them, so it's going to start to window that out. And then on top of that, see over here it says no smoothing? Well, now I'm going to go to something, this is a fabulous feature of REW, it has psychoacoustic smoothing. So we hear boosts more acutely, or we hear boosts more than we hear cuts. So you can put a let's say that we have a Q of 1, which is pretty low Q. So we've got a nice broad hump. And it's only a dB.5 or 2 dB. You're going to hear that. But you turn that into a dB down or dB.5 down, and that gets much harder to hear, especially if it's higher Q. Yes?
These are microphones. These are microphones, but they're not quite the same.
Not even remotely.
Yeah, and so how do you figure that into, is that part of the cycle?
That's part of why I'm telling you this. What this psychoacoustic smoothing is doing is that it's leaving the boosts less touched than it's smoothing the cuts more than the boosts.
Same way that...
Because we want to smooth out those cuts because we can't hear them so much, but we need to pay more attention to the boosts, right? The accentuated areas of the frequency response curve, because we need to see those because we're going to hear them more. Yes.
So as you change both parameters, you're increasing from 15 to 35.
Yeah.
You're adding psychoacoustic.
That's right.
You are essentially letting the room speak.
Yep.
And you're accounting better for how we hear it.
Yes, and I'm throwing away, excuse my language, a shit ton of data in the process. When you average, when you smooth, you are throwing away data. In the service of getting to some underlying structure of the data that correlates to what we think sounds good.
Therefore, when we're doing these measurements at home, we set it to 35 in psycho?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, this is how I would recommend you set it up. If you're using REW to calibrate a room in your home, this would be my recommendation, yes.
The other thing is hearing. We're all a little bit different in
Yeah.
how we hear. And,
Yeah.
as we age, that changes things. At least it used to be in my old AM radio in my car, a little booster based upon the level that I'm actually playing and my sensitivity to certain frequencies as I increase them. Does that play in here as well?
No, it doesn't play into the analyzer. The analyzer is blind to how loud it is in the room. I mean, I've calibrated the mic so it's actually accurate sound pressure level, but I don't want to get off in a discussion of Fletcher mentioned curves, but the frequency response of our hearing changes with sound pressure level. I was careful there. There's a difference between loudness and sound pressure level. Sound pressure level is a physical phenomenon that we can measure. Loudness is perceptual, and perceived loudness can go up with distortion, and basically there's other things that come into play with loudness per se. But the louder it is, the more bass and the more. That's why it's kind of fun to listen loud. And when I tune recording studios, I pay, if I'm doing the main monitors, which are basically there for, so the producer can just crank the hell out of it and get some energy in the room, I tune them a little differently. I make them softer sounding, because at those sound pressure levels, the high frequency sensitivity, our ear goes up disproportionately to other frequencies, and they get just too edgy sounding. So they sound soft at lower levels, but they sound right at, so that all comes into play. For home audio, forget about it. You're not getting that loud.
When you make this change, do you have to make another measurement, or can you go right back to the...
I could. I'm going to make another measurement because I can't find the damn button anymore. And this is just the global default. It's driving me nuts here. So where are we? We're going to measure let's go back to the left speaker. And I've got all those curves, and they look smoother, but that's not what I wanted to do. Yes, remove those. Okay, so now that's what that left speaker curve looks like with these new measurements. See how this is just giving me the generalized underlying data structure without those sharp dips that will catch my eye and go, oh my God, it's really bad. It's not really bad. If it were really bad, we'd still be able to see it on this graph. What's really bad here, and I wouldn't say it's really bad, this is actually quite good, and I expected these to be well-behaved loudspeakers because Siegfried knew what he was doing. I had the pleasure of spending some time with him many years ago. Around 450 hertz there, that bump there, we're going to take a look at that. The relatively broad, but not too broad, dip there in the upper 200s. We might try to bring that up. Got to do something about the runaway high end there. Probably smooth that out a little bit. So let's, as a matter of fact, let's get into it. Jim, can I ask you to, I think I might ask you to drive on the, because it'll just go faster, because I don't know that. What I want is, all right, so what I would like is, let's turn the tweeter down 4 dB on the left channel. Okay.
When you're saying tweeter, is there a super tweeter in the tweeter?
It kind of, you know, honestly, this is almost acting like a super tweeter to this tweeter, because this is 6 kilohertz. That's, in my humble opinion, too high. But
And the rear one is
I'm assuming they're in parallel.
up to the top.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm assuming they're just driven in parallel.
That's the phase.
But with the phase, yeah, to keep the dipole all the way up, yes. So for 6 kilohertz, this is a pretty big driver. This looks like a 3 inch, no, it's a 2 inch, I guess. No, 2.5. What is that, a 2.5 or 3 inch? Yeah, 3 inch is kind of big for 6 kilohertz crossover. It's not terrible, but depends on, I would have to, in order to make those decisions, you look at the off-axis response of all the drivers and try to find a crossover point that keeps the off-axis performance reasonably consistent.
But you're going after that rise at the top.
I'm going after the rise at the top.
Where does that start? I can't read it from here. Does it start around?
It starts at about the well, 6 kilohertz is at the,
That's a flat area.
yeah, it's right here at the front edge of that flat area.
Right.
And then it starts to take off at 8 kilohertz is where the knee in the curve is that it goes up. So
Hey, I was wrong. The crossover is actually at 7,500.
the crossover's at 7,500.
That perfectly.
That makes more sense. Yes, because now at 7,500, the tweeter's just too loud.
Yeah, it's a fourth order at 7,500.
Yeah, that
So I've got it down 4 dB.
respectfully disagree.
With a dead man?
With a dead guy, yeah.
Nerve.
At any rate, let's, while we're at it, let's go to input EQ and see where my cursor is. So what is that? 400, that's about 500 hertz. So let's put a EQ on the left channel at 500 hertz. And what's that bump you have there?
That's something that's built in.
Something that's been, all right, so let's leave that alone. But that's on a driver, not on the input EQ.
That's on the input.
That's on the input.
Yeah, it's enabled. It's a
Okay.
dB.
And it's at 250? Okay, we'll come back to that. So let's go to 500.
Okay.
And let's put a Q of 1.5 and a gain of -3. All right.
Okay.
Let's go here. Don't want that. And here we go. Okay, so we're not doing what we think we were doing. And I watched him type it in, but I'm not seeing the change.
Let me do it on the one labeled right tweeter. Maybe we got our channels.
Maybe
reversed.
back on both, reversed on both sides? I don't, that would actually make more sense with the bass response I saw earlier.
Hey, Manny, when you're doing your sweeps,
Yeah.
about 80% of the collection data is done. From that point on, I can't hear anything. Does that mean I'm at some high frequency loss, or something wrong with the tweeter? Or
Probably some of both. There we go. So, interesting. So now we're highlighting the problem at the crossover frequency.
What did you change? I'm sorry.
We brought the tweeter level down. So now the tweeter level is consistent with the upper mid-range driver, right? See how if you didn't have that big dip at 8 kilohertz, that would just kind of go across nicely. So, but we do have the big dip at 8 kilohertz. So this is why digital EQ is so awesome. You could not do this with capacitors and inductors and resistors. Period. Forget about it. Can't get there from here.
Phase delays. Plus you induce phase delays.
Well, we're inducing phase delays here, right? The DSP is inducing the same. I mean, that's how you get the filtering is the phase response, right?
Right. So you're applying an EQ. It's a digital version of an analog EQ.
Yeah.
You're also manipulating phases off
Of course.
at the same time. But of course, we know there's other more advanced DSP that can correct.
That's correct.
But that's not what REW.
Put that out of your mind. You can't hear that shit. Just forget it. It like,
Agree with the base.
yeah. I'll make a large bet and ask you to prove that in a blind trial, and then I can retire. So, yeah.
With level, and now you're going to look at it maybe a parametric.
That's right. So next thing we're going to do, or Jim is going to do, and I really appreciate you stepping in. This is going a lot faster. I appreciate it a lot. Let's put on the input EQ. Let's put at 7,250 hertz. So what I'm looking for those of you guys who are going to be doing this at home, I don't care so much that the bottom of the sharp part of the dip is right at 8 kilohertz, but the center of the broadband low Q portion of that, the center of that is closer to 7 kilohertz, right? See how it's asymmetrical? And so I don't want to just automatically put my EQ at the low point of the anomaly. I want to put it at the center of the lower Q portion of that broader dip. So at 7,250, let's go up 3 dB with a Q of 2.
Okay.
Let's see what we get here. Okay, a little better. So now we're looking at that teal curve. Let me turn off some of these confounding. All right, so this one here, that doesn't do anything. And that's what we had. And blue. All right, so that's where we ended up, and we were there after we brought the tweeter down in level, and we were there before we brought the tweeter down in level. So now we're, at least through the crossover region, we're getting closer to his intended response in the 7 kilohertz region. Now,
We're the green one rather than the top blue or the red.
that's correct. We're the one in the middle now. And so we could continue to refine that. I'd probably ask you to bring the See how we brought the little bump around 5 kilohertz up? And you see how it's up a little bit at 10K? So let's go to a Q of 3 on that and a boost of 4. So I'm going to make the Q narrower on the corrective EQ, but I'm going to increase the level by a dB.
At which frequency?
7,250 is where we are. And so I'm going to get rid of that. All right, so now we've got the purple curve, right? And that's looking pretty good to me, right? I'd probably leave that alone for now. So we've smoothed out the high end a bit. I am concerned about why was there a big change at 400 hertz? What's going on there? Jim, did we?
No, I didn't do anything.
That came, but it's not there anymore. Not sure what's going on there. All right, anyway, this is where we are now. So this is where we are now. What I want to go after next, this region right here, around, so we're going to put an EQ at 1,200. Yeah, 1,000, no, actually a little lower, 1,100. And we're going to do a Q of 2, and we're going to do minus 1.5. I wish you could see the EQ curves, but we don't have a way to display both. So what's the next thing that's bothering me in this response curve is the hump in the mid-range around 1 kilohertz. So I'm going to put like a dB and a half of reduction. What did I say, a Q of 2? Yeah, something like that. So Q of 2 minus 1.5 at 1,100 hertz. And let's see what that gives us. So there we go. Yeah, I was probably right to keep it a little higher. Let's bump that up to like 1,300 and yeah, let's bump it up to 1,300.
Oh, it's totally better.
Totally, it is totally better. See where we've gone here? See, now look at that orange curve. See how that's smoother, gently declining, right? This is starting to look like what I want to see in a loudspeaker like this in a room.
So would you change that 900 or 800 peak there?
No, not for now. You know, there's always, you know, I started doing this with like 5-band analog parametric EQs. So you learn to be extremely judicious. You don't, when you go do this on your home system, and I would encourage you to play with it, be very careful, you can blow shit up. I took out an entire set of drivers from a custom set of loudspeakers that, what's his first name, Vandersteen's first name? Richard Vandersteen. I was up in Seattle, let a feedback loop happen, smoked $4,000 worth of drivers. Don't do that. It's not a good it's not a good day. So at any rate, be careful with your levels where you set. Don't type in 10 when you meant to type in 1.0 or something, because those kinds of things are easy to do and can lead to bad outcomes. So the next thing I want to do is go after this little bump at 450 hertz. And that's not such a big deal, but it's a little bit of a big deal. So let's do 400, Jim, let's do 450 hertz. Actually, no, let's do more like 480 hertz, because I want to shift it to the right for the same thing I was describing earlier. It's not necessarily the top of the peak that I'm concerned with. I kind of want to bring that region down and not try to get out every bump and wiggle. So like 480 hertz or something, and let's do -1 dB with a Q of 2.5.
Okay, are you worried about the 700 dip there that I really think you're going to take?
Yeah, I don't want to make that worse. And I may come back and see if I can fill that in.
You go a higher Q than the door?
Yeah, we'll just see. You know, I'm winging it here.
And at this stage, you're always cutting, not boosting.
Not necessarily. As a general rule, cut better than boost. That being said, you do what you need to do. You got to be careful, because if you cannot always fill in a dip. Thank you. Such a big word. I can never keep it straight. You can never fill in you can't always fill in a dip. You can almost always reduce a peak. If you start typing in 5 dB, 6 dB to fill in something and it doesn't seem to be moving much, red lights should be going off in your head that this is not fixable. Leave it alone. You can't. Not everything is fixable. And this is why EQ gets a bad rap. Because you can get in here and start tweaking away and get the line to look quite flat. But if you're over EQing, if you haven't been judicious and if you haven't set up your microphones and your averaging and all the stuff I talked about earlier, you can get yourself into trouble. So. All right. So now you can kind of see in your mind's eye. Let me get rid of the purple curve. I'll just start turning stuff off. And we can that one. What was so this is where we are now. So that's starting to look a little bit more like what I want to see. I feel like we lost something in that.
Now, would you then typically save that and then go to the right speaker?
Yeah,
try to get them
that's right. It's pretty important to get them matched, but don't go nuts. Once again, don't over EQ to get them perfectly matched. They need to be well matched, but they never will be perfectly matched. And if you make that error, it will sound goofy, or can sound goofy. Let's go, Jim. Now let's go to 300 hertz. Once again, it's an asymmetrical dip, so I'm shifting to the right from the very lowest point, 300, maybe even higher. Let's do like 315, because I'm being difficult. 315 hertz plus, wow, we need to get that up there a little bit, plus 3 dB, Q of 3. See what we get with that. All right, that didn't work. It's not horrible, but I don't like that. Let's reduce it in frequency to like 285. I want it lower. 285, and let's make it a boost of 2 dB instead of 3, and let's bring the Q to 4. Okay, I take that back. Go back to 3 dB of boost. So 3 dB, 285 hertz, and a Q of 4. All right, that's a little more like it. So now we've got that. This is starting to come together, right? By the way, some equalizers read out in bandwidth instead of Q. Usually there's a way to switch between the two. Q is sort of the inverse of bandwidth. So a high Q is a very narrow bandwidth, and a low Q is a very wide bandwidth. So beware of whether it says BW or Q next to your.
Just, I was going back to your right-left comments. I was thinking about this. So normally you would want to treat your room first, right? Like try to do as much with your room, I would think, before you get to EQ. And then, like for instance, I have some asymmetry room structure design. You would then do EQ, but would you go back to room treatment? Or would you go, as much as you're talking about left?
Would you iterate?
Would you iterate on the room treatment?
No, probably, generally not, honestly, for me. In residential spaces, the room treatment is basically opportunistic, which is a polite way of saying whatever your wife will allow. And to be honest, you know, I don't really want fiberglass panels on my living room wall either. And you can get some pretty nice ones. There's you know, you can get some sculpted foam stuff that can be interesting. There's a tendency to over-damp rooms. You know, if you go to like GIK, that site, and you know they'll try to sell you, you know, as many fiberglass panels as will fit in your space because that will sound best. It will not. There's a big problem in LA studio design these days. I don't know how this came up, but there's this tendency to just put 1 or 2 inches of fiberglass on every surface. I'm like, what the hell are you guys doing? These rooms sound terrible. But they sound treated. And so it sounds like you did something, but that isn't necessarily the thing. What you should be in your house, in your room, my best advice, you know, if you can get some if you have a particularly reverberant living room, a lot of glass, you can't put any panels on the glass, well, you can get heavy drapes. And then when you listen, you can at least get rid of some of the high frequencies. If they are not like really heavy, probably heavier and more expensive than you want to spend on drapes, they're not doing very much at all. Just is what it is. But the ceiling is generally a good place to get some acoustical treatments. And if you want to spend a little more money, you can just, you know, very cleanly cover the entire ceiling in fabric and put some fiberglass behind there. There's some trick ways you can do that. In the space itself, I would encourage you to go more in the direction of what we have here. Just put a bunch of stuff in the room, big stuff, furniture, couches, chairs, hanging plants, yeah, you know, books, statues, big Ming vases, you know. It will diffuse the energy in the room, and that's about the best you can do. Now, for bass, the best way to do it is multiple subwoofers, a subwoofer array. That's how you get great bass in a small space that's going to have room modes. For that, you need a processor like this. You can array, you can adjust it. How to do that is far beyond what we're going to talk about today, but it is possible, and Peter does it quite successfully in his room, and it's become my standard. I have a dear friend who's been a studio owner in San Rafael, and for years I'm like, Ari, man, you got to do this 4 subwoofer thing and let me calibrate it, because he's complaining, I got to sit here to mix the bass, then I come up and I got to take it to my car because I can't tell where the bass is, and finally had enough money and I set him up. He was like, it was like this revelation. For 20 years I've been like, let me do this thing. It is the right way to get bass. It's almost the only way. You can get lucky. The dipoles can help because they just don't energize room modes as aggressively. And then at very low frequencies, if you really want to go way down, you go to a monopole subwoofer like below 40 hertz. right?
On the ceiling, in your opinion, is it better to do diffusion or absorption?
Generally absorption, but I mean, what I recommend is absorption, but with plenty of land between the absorbers so that you're getting some reflection, some absorption, and it mixes it up. You know, never 1 inch. Just don't even do 1 inch thick absorbers. 2 at a minimum, 4 much better. I mean, wavelengths are long, man. You right? If you want to diffract a 500 hertz sound wave, which is not really what we'd consider a low frequency, you need something like a basketball at a minimum, right? Bigger even, right? To get it to scatter a little bit. And, you know, at 4 inches, you can get pretty good absorption down into the low mid-range, right? And then if you know, you can do trick patterns where you leave a few inches and put stripes and do, you know, and then you just cover it all with fabric and move all your lights down. It's cheap, really. One weekend, you'll have it done. Let's go after that dip at 600-700 hertz there. So let's go to, in this instance, the low and the peak is, the low point of the dip is actually in the center of that. So let's bump up by 1.5 dB, 650 hertz. More like 675 hertz. So 675 hertz plus 2 Q of 3. Okay. And while we're at it, let's, because I want to move to the other speaker now. I'm got to be mindful of the time here. Let's put something in at 60 hertz. 60 hertz minus 2 Q of 1.4. Maybe even a Q of 1. Let's do 1.4 to start with. Okay, got all that? Yeah. You rock, by the way. I really appreciate it. You have no idea. So what is this? We're now looking at the green curve-ish thing. That's getting there.
Now, REW will do this all automated?
Yeah. Tell it how many bands of EQ you want to throw at it, and it'll just do it. And it'll do it to a curve too. You can have it automate it. Less EQ, better. So don't let it have 20 bands to play with. It'll over EQ. You know, if I were here doing this alone, I'd have been done with the system by now. You know, I'm very fast at it, and I like seeing it, but it took me 30 years to get there. So I can highly recommend the optimizer. Let the computer do the work for you. What's bothering me now right here is. Let me see.
Now this rattling of whatever it is in the ceiling, that doesn't affect this? Because it's surprisingly loud. I mean, when you
it is. Yeah, no, the sweep is, remember that this type of measurement is pretty immune to noise, within reason. I mean, obviously you can have corrupt measurements if the room's not quiet enough. This is a little low. Like I probably should be a few dB louder just to make sure I get over the noise floor. And then I could also increase the sweep time. Like every time you double the length of the sweep, you get another, I think, 3 dB of signal to noise ratio. So I could go to a 10-second sweep or like a 5-second sweep now, and I could increase the level. And if I did that, I don't think that curve would change very much at all, if at all. Actually, I don't think it would change at all. But just to be safe, and when you're at, this doesn't come up too much in your average residence, but sometimes there's like an air handle or something that's shaking the building at a very low frequency, and it can really mess you up. So be on the lookout for those kinds of things. You know, the refrigerator is pushed up against the wall, which happens to be just the other side of the wall from your listening area, or some goofy thing like that, and it's shaking the wall, and you don't hear it because it's down at 25 hertz.
And that's why I have a remote switcher thing on the power plug for the refrigerator. Because when I listen to the system,
You don't want to hear. Turn that off. All right, so let's go to 300 hertz, Jim, and let's give us a dB with a Q of 3. And remind me what we have going on up around 7-8 kilohertz.
73, around 7,400. 7250 plus 4 Q of 3.
All right, so let's add a half a dB to that. So plus 4, make it plus 4.5. And what did I say at 300? A dB, Q of 3?
300.
All right, let's see what that does. Yeah.
Wait, let me turn it on.
Oh, yeah, that'd be good. Okay. Kind of like that.
that's interesting on the high end though. It didn't.
Well, I only added a half a dB. All right. And it's at 7. So it did exactly what I asked it to do, half dB around 7,300 hertz or something like that. So the blue curve is just a touch higher than the green up there. And it smoothed it out at 300 was the EQ there. And I'd probably stop for now, honestly. Probably stop right here. So let's go to the other channel, shall we? So that's a pretty good looking curve. That's a pretty good looking curve for a starting spot, right? Okay. Now we got to make we got to match the blue curve here. So we started top down last time. Let's start from the bottom up. Let's so there's a couple of dB difference down below 30 hertz. Not going to chase. Actually, only a dB. It's such a big screen, man. It's like it's only a dB. We're leaving that alone. But we are going to go after that 60 hertz bump.
And I think it was the same as.
It was, yeah, 60 hertz, a different shape, different shape. So at 60 hertz, Q of 4, much higher Q, and a minus 4. All right.
So I would have found a lower Q.
No, higher Q, because it's a higher Q anomaly. That was a lower Q anomaly, so we needed a lower Q to bring the broader curve down. This is a little higher, so we need a higher Q to match it, right? The corrective EQ is, going to be correlated, roughly the inverse. So let's go to, let's throw in a E band at 3, what do I want? So you see that whole region between about 250 hertz and 500. Is this useful for me to talk out loud like this? Okay, I'm just like, yeah, this is, I'm literally kind of just talking out loud, like my thought process here and how to approach this. So 250 to 500 hertz, you see that region there? So where the blue curve is higher than the yellow, or the sort of a cantaloupe color, isn't it? We'll call the center of that 300, we may have to, I'm trying to think how to approach that. Let's go to 350 hertz. You know, I think I might have to go to the 2 bands here. Let's see how this works. 350 hertz. I'm going to go with a little higher Q than I might normally. But let's do a Q of 3 and a boost of 3. Now, we got to do something about this peak right in here. See where the cursor is at like 950 hertz. So 950 hertz minus 3 Q of 5.
How high can a Q go? Is it like 1 to 10? The full?
It depends on the limitation of the analyzer, but 10 would be a very high Q. I think you can go much higher. I mean, mathematically, it's just numbers, but.
Oh, okay.
I've got a question on high Qs. Is there ringing that starts at like after 7 or 8? I've heard that.
Yes, of course. So what Peter is talking about is the relationship of time and frequency, right? So, and I've been alluding to this, you know, it takes a certain amount of time for a wavelength of a given length to pass by a point in space. The microphone capsule in our case here is what's relevant, or your ear. And when you have high Q filters, when you look at them in the time domain, which would be the impulse response, you will see what looks like ringing. They go on in time much longer. So, yeah, high Q filters can create time smearing, but if they're properly applied to correct the inverse condition, you're canceling the resonance.
Okay, so there's no rule of thumb. You don't want to
Yeah, I mean, I get nervous when I go much over 5. I mean, I'll do 6. There should be no reason in acoustics to be dialing in Qs of 10 or something like that. And that's part of the reason I use so much smoothing. I can't even see that stuff, right? And therefore, I can't correct it if I can't see it, and it keeps me out of trouble. I suggest you do similarly.
If you need that much Q, you need to improve the
Yeah, you need to squint more so that you can't see all the lines or something. Yeah, well, no, it just doesn't always work that way. It's more complicated than that the gear's crap because you needed to put in a high Q filter. That's not necessarily true. All right, so now the tweeter is awfully low here. Where's our tweeter level on this channel? Did we bring it down?
They're exactly the same. They're both at -4.
Okay, so they're both at -4, but one is 4 dB lower than the other. Something is wrong. I do not have time to sort this out.
Well, my first thought is, I guess they are towed in about.
They're towed in about the same. You know, it's not, they're not light years apart. They're not enough to make a 4 dB broadband difference, but that's just straight gain. Something somewhere.
Is that an input level or it applies to both?
I don't know. Can you poke around in there? Is there 4 dB of change on the tweeter that?
They're both set to the same gain.
Because I don't remember this being the case when we were looking at the left and right channels earlier.
They were the same before.
I thought they were kind of the same before.
Boosts we added to the right.
Can you?
We added well, that's all we've added to the right at the high end. Or to the left. At the,
Well, left.
Yeah.
Can you copy the EQ that we used on this left speaker to the other one?
No.
No? No.
Manually.
Well, manually, however,
Go find manual.
go shift to manual mode and put that in. But I mean, we need to get that tweeter level up, so we'll do what we need to do.
So I can raise it on the output, just the whole channel.
Yeah, the tweeter channel on that right speaker needs to come up 4 dB. And then we want the same EQ that we used on the left channel to also be applied, which was something around 7,200 hertz or something. Yeah.
Where to go? 7250.
Yeah.
4.5. Oh, it's
Yeah.
up 4.5. Yeah. With the Q of 3.
So what Jim is doing is copying the EQ that we used on the other side. So what?
We have more people. I said the people behind it. I mean, could they be causing them?
I don't think so. Maybe. I mean, it's not out of the question, but not that. I don't think. I mean, I suppose. No, there's nobody like line of sight here.
But Manny, when you went to the first, to the left, you put in the drop in the level, but then you reverse that and go to a filter, a barometric filter?
No, I did both.
You did both, okay.
Yeah.
Because it looks like that's kind of, that's what it is.
Yeah. All right. Let's see what we get here. Yeah, that's more like it. Yeah, let me get rid of that. So this is pretty well matched. We're getting there. So this region here, tell me again the crossover, the bandwidth of the mid-range driver, the upper mid-range?
1,000 to 7,500.
1,000 to 7,500. Yeah, it's really good around a K. All right, let's do this. So we see the region between like 1,700 hertz and about 4,600 hertz. The blue curve is below the green curve. Oh no, it's the green curve is above the blue curve. The blue curve is our reference. So the green curve needs to come down in that region. So let's do a filter at, let's say 2,800 minus 1. Let's do minus 1.5. And let's make it a Q of 0.7. Q.7, I think we'll need to go a little more than 1 dB, but now that's the kind of thing that would be very audible, because you're talking about something that's, you know, a solid octave, over an octave wide, even though it's only a dB or so, it would make the presence of the one speaker be a little more than the other, and
It's kind of the area under the curve.
it's an area under the curve problem. You're exactly correct. That's a good way to put it. All right, so now there's our match. That's pretty good. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Let's see if we can. We got that 7K. All right, one last band of EQ, then maybe we should listen to this. What do you think? Wouldn't want to do that.
Go from preset to preset, right? We can listen to it.
Yeah, we can. We should be able to.
I'm just going to keep listening to test tones.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Yes. So let's. I want to touch up. We're going to leave the. We may come take a look at the bass, but remind me what's going on at 60 hertz.
-4 with a Q of 4.
All right, make it -6. And where's the crossover point on the bass, on the woofers?
120.
And let's add a dB to the woofers, to that woofer, to the right woofer. Can anybody maybe take a guess at why I need to add energy to the right woofer and not the left woofer?
Well, is the right woofer the red line?
The right woofer is the red line, right? Oh, the magenta, yeah.
It seems to be higher than the green line, so I don't have a clue. What are you going to add to that?
No, the red line is not higher. It's lower.
At 90, you mean?
I'm looking below 50 hertz is where my eye is going.
Oh, below 60.
Below 50 hertz, yeah. So I asked him to take that peak at 60 hertz down quite a bit, but then add to everything below 100, right? The reason is there's a tremendous bass trap on this side of the room and a perfect corner on that side of the room. So you're going to get more bass reinforcement. So as much as possible, we like the EQ to be the same per speaker, and if they have to be very different, a red flag should go up. But if you have a great deal of asymmetry in your room, which happens in residential space, like this side opens up to the great room or whatever, and this side is up against, glass windows, there is no getting great sound in that room, just if you have those conditions.
IQ at 60, a low Q below 100, or a shelf below.
Just raising the level of the whole woofer.
Right, so it's stacking at 60.
Yes, that's right. All right, so the other thing I want to take a look at is at 700. We don't have any EQ around 700 on the right speaker yet, right?
No.
No. All right, so let's at... Yeah, 700 hertz, Q of 3.5 plus 1 dB. And then let's do at 5 kilohertz, Q of 1 plus a half a dB. Oh, let's get cute. 0.7 dB.
That is interesting because you would normally be doing this all on your notebook, I would assume, typically, on job.
Yeah.
And now with this big screen, it's like, what?
Yeah, it's... Yeah, I have to say it's kind of nice. All right, so so let's get rid of that. So that's where we are for our left-right match right now. And I think we're going to call that good enough. No, we're not. Let's go back to that 700 hertz. What did I say at 700 hertz?
You have to restrain.
Plus 1.
Yeah. Crank that up another dB. And it's 700? Let's make it 720, and let's make it a dB and a half. Yeah. Yeah, so the red curve came up a little bit there in the 700 hertz region. That's a little better. A little more. Let's go. I want to overdo it because I'm tired of this. Let's add a dB to whatever we have now. And yeah, nothing. Okay, now we've got the green curve there. I'm kind of liking that.
Do you ever take, now at this point, do you ever take an L plus R, like a complex sum?
I do, and it's not a bad idea. Let's do it. Let's see what we get. So both channels are on, right?
Yeah.
And what's important there is the bass. So what's going to happen is it's going to get really goofy in the mid-range and above, like because you're going to get all kinds of interference effects. The bass should roughly sum, right? And you'll see it's an interesting problem because bass is almost always mixed mono, right? There's not a lot of stereo in bass. As a matter of fact, if you like vinyl, it is intentionally summed and made mono regardless of how it was recorded. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can't hear it, so it's fine. But that doesn't happen at higher frequencies, so you get good, and this is part of the how do you approach the calibration problem, and it's going to be very room and loudspeaker dependent, and to a certain extent, program dependent.
Now you're on just the left speaker now, right?
No, I'm going to do left and right simultaneously because I had a request, and I take requests.
It says output speaker left.
You see, it says L plus R.
Oh, sorry. Thought it said left.
Good. Bass a lot. It's good.
So we should see about 6 dB of increase in the bass. Is that what we see? I don't know, roughly, yeah? Yeah, so that's really good. The speakers are actually summing quite well. That's an excellent result. Yeah.
In my room, it doesn't look like that at all because I have an incredibly asymmetric setup.
Yeah, and so you're just not going to get away from that. I think we should let them listen to some stuff. What do you think?
Yay.
Yay, okay. How do we do that? That's your domain.
So this will be a before and after, or?
Right now, we're going to listen after, I guess. I don't know. It's whatever, however, we have presets, so we can go back to what we started with and then switch back and forth. And if Jim shows me how to do it, I can do it over here. And let's get a seat where the mics were. Somebody ought to sit where the mics were, right? Or there you go.
Do you want to hear the previous EQ settings to compare to that?
You mean no EQ?
Yeah, well, there's a little.
Oh.
Because Siegfried had EQ built into his settings.
Okay.
So there's an issue when you want to, if you're the loudspeaker designer and you've got a digital EQ like this, if you need to EQ something near a crossover point, you need to add global EQ because you can't always make it work on the EQ for that channel, for that particular driver, if the anomaly is in the way they're blending and you can't work it out with the crossover slopes and crossover points.
Right.
So that's undoubtedly what Siegfried was up against, and so he put in a band of EQ to correct for that kind of thing. Yeah.
Now, in a practical setting for an analog guy,
Yeah.
you would have to have a A to D, D to A
Yeah.
box between your source and
Yeah,
your preamp.
that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not really a purist setup, but
Yeah, you should give that shit up. I don't know how to put it more plainly. If you're not, let me make a statement, and I'm not being pompous, and I'm not for real. If you're not at this point in time using this kind of process with DSP and good measurement, you don't have a hi-fi rig. You have a hobby rig, and you're not listening to a reference, because I don't know how you can get to that any other way. And I'm going to just leave it out at that.
Put in a tape loop
Yeah, absolutely. I've done that. As a matter of fact, the last time I did a presentation for this group, we're at, what's her name?
Leslie.
Leslie, thank you. God, how embarrassing. She's going to watch this. Sorry, Leslie. At her house, and that's exactly how we did it. I brought a processor, and we put it in a tape loop, and we could just turn it on and off in the tape loop on the preamp. And that's a good way to do it. It's an easy way to do it. It's a great way. It's the perfect way to do it, as a matter of fact.
We'll do 10 seconds of the original and 10 seconds of Manny's setting.
Yeah, or at some intelligent point in the music that's roughly 10, you know what I mean?
11 seconds?
Use your ear. I have faith. 10's a little short. So I want to make a couple comments.
If anybody else wants to.
Not a great choice for evaluation. Why? There's no bass. There's nothing in here below 300 hertz hardly. Well, that's not below that, but I mean, it's a female vocalist singing pretty high in her range on an acoustic guitar. Is no way to get the relative balance of low mid-range bass to, but that being said, it's a fine test track when combined with others, and this is a huge, huge issue when we evaluate audio systems. You have to, it's not optional, listen to a number of tracks of different genres and different spectral content to come to some coherent evaluation, because otherwise you chase your tail. So what I heard in that is that we smoothed out the mid-range. She had a bit of a nasal quality in the unprocessed, and there was also some high-frequency tiz. It was a little tizzy way up top, and of course, because everything above 8K was cranked like 5 dB, and I could hear it. It wasn't annoying, but it was like, you know, that's not quite, well, all right, maybe up here, I was back there. It could be annoying. So I mean, those two things are a big, big deal. Her voice sounds a lot smoother to me, but I can get no sense of anything we've done lower down. So for a long time, if I, you know, had to evaluate something quickly, my go-to track was something from Rage Against the Machine, and I've mellowed out in my old age, and now I use AC/DC Back in Black. And the reason is, Thunderstruck is great. It's on my list, right? Thunderstruck is, I just got used to Back in Black, and there's a sound of the snare drum. There's the right amount of bass. It's not a bass heavy. It's a beautiful recording, actually. I mean, Mutt Lange knocked it out of the park on that. So, but it's broadband. It's very broadband. It's got, if the guitars are very broadband, and if there's min-range honk, and you're going to hear it. If there's not enough crack on the snare, it immediately comes up. If the vocal isn't sitting, all these things are you can get from one quick listen. If I have to evaluate something quickly, I go to something like that. If the level is quite high, right? So it makes it easy for your ear to hear. I don't have to wait for the chorus to come around to get the whole band. You know what I mean? Things like that matter if you do this professionally, and you have to know what it sounds like quickly. And then after the 2000th play, it doesn't take me very long to go, oh, I got to go, what's going on at 2 kilohertz? And I will go take a look. Yes?
How different is your reaction and your ability to do what you do in a studio versus a home? How different is she?
How different? Oh, the process isn't all that different, honestly. I still have to set up the same number of microphones. I'd use a tighter clustering than I used here, but not if I were in somebody's home. I'd probably bring them back into, like, you know, so that they were around this kind of space. No, because it's the same thing. The difference is this. In a recording studio, generally I'm dealing with pros who know how to let another professional do his job. And when I get to hobbyists, sometimes there's a little, yeah.
The internet is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, everybody's an expert. And there's some good information on the internet, but some truly horrible information on the internet. And
Tell my doctor.
yeah, exactly. Anybody who's a consultant, it's this love-hate thing, all right? It's because it's nice that you have educated clients, but at the same time, if you haven't been doing it for 30 years, there's certain things you might miss. So at any rate, can we play something that's got like kick drum bass?
How about Cousin John and Marcus Miller?
Could do that, you know? There's no, that's good. I like Marcus Miller, that Marcus Miller cut.
We're not streaming.
Oh, we're not streaming, so it's whatever you got. All right, just play something.
Surely you have Motorhead, Thunder.
Right.
Going back to that.
You know, I'm not anywhere where I can hear this, so it doesn't matter. Actually, let me sit. Go ahead. Yeah, Back in Black. Why not? Let's see what we got here. So here's what I hear from that. Quite happy with the sound. It's a little soft, but only a little. This recording has a big wood snare drum, and I'm looking for the right balance of crack, which is up in the 2 kilohertz region, all the way down to the body of the drum, which is much more like 200 hertz or something, 250, somewhere down there. And I like that balance. The guitars don't sound honky. The cymbals are not up front in this, but they're there. The sibilance on his voice is just about right. The high end is quite good. I might want to hear a little more edge from the whole thing, but maybe not. I need to listen a little bit more. The bass, I think, sounds really quite good. It's about right. I wouldn't want more bass. I might even take the whole region down around 60 hertz down a tweak, but that's highly subjective. So there's an interesting thing with bass and treble. I'll relay the results of a study that was done at Harman, because they have done so much good work over the years. Big shout out to those guys. You give professional mix engineers you know, some well-produced music that they all know, Steely Dan or something, whatever, you know, stuff that they know. And you give them a knob for bass and you give them a knob for treble and say, turn those knobs until it sounds like the right amount of bass and treble. They will, you do this 20 times with 20 different professional mix engineers, and they'll converge within a few dB on the high end. But on the low end, they can be 6 dB apart. 6 dB is a lot. So there's a lot more subjectivity in what is the quote-unquote right amount of bass, person to person, than there is at the high end. Throughout the whole body of the mid-range, you know, from upper bass through low treble, it's got to be smooth. Full stop. If there's any resonances in there, you know, your ear will cue on that. But the basic tilt is a little more subjective. And so that's where, getting to finish the question from earlier, difference between calibrating a studio versus, or a professional work environment, let's call it, versus a residence. There's more latitude for, hey man, it's your entertainment system. Be entertained. A ton of bass gets you off, knock yourself out, you know, but you can't mix a movie like that, you know, and so pros understand that you know, they're looking for somebody to double check and the measurements have to look right, and if they're not lining up, something's wrong and we got to get to the bottom of it. So that would be the big difference. I would be a little more free to tweak the low to high ratio, yeah, or balance, I guess. All right, sorry. I'll shut up now. Somebody else sit up front. Somebody ought to sit in the sweet spot. This is another thing. Why do audiophiles, here, come listen to my, you know, $50,000 loudspeakers, and they get to the right side of the couch like this, way off axis, and go, yeah, that sounds the microdynamic. Like, you got to be in the middle. Anyway. So does anybody hear that this is not quite as loud as the other?
I do, and it also sounds like it's a little more forward. The original sounds a little more forward sounding.
That's right, because we took out the mid-range. But what I want to do is equalize the level. So can we add a dB to the calibrated one, because it's just a little lower, because mostly I cut. Overall.
There's definitely a difference.
Yeah, there's a difference between the two presets level. This is another big deal. If you're comparing two pieces of gear and you don't have 1/10 of a dB accuracy or better, you will not hear a level difference, but you prefer the louder one.
Yeah.
And there's
People don't understand that humans don't hear linearly. It's a U-shaped curve
It's-
for a
yeah.
auditory system. That's why
Yeah.
the lower levels, you don't hear the bottom end or the top end. That's what this button did.
That's not what I was referring to. That's correct. That's all true.
Yeah.
And I spoke to that earlier about, in professional environments where sometimes the SPL levels can get very high.
Yeah.
You have to think about the EQ curve a little differently, because you got to compensate.
Threshold is consistent.
That's right. So, no, what I'm talking about, like if you're comparing two boxes, two preamps, two whatever, and you haven't matched the gain carefully to within 1/10 of a dB, that's the outside. You're going to prefer whatever is louder, but it's not such a big difference that you'll hear it as being louder. You'll just go, it's just a little clearer, a little brighter, and you're just wasting your time.
Sitting here seeing the woofers, interesting is it's on the bass beat, they go back, almost like the relative phase. I don't know if that's normal. I think like with a kick drum, boom, these are going in.
It depends. It depends on how it was recorded, I suppose. I mean, I don't know. I think that absolute polarity is not a thing, input to output, from the microphone in the studio all the way to the speaker. But because what's happening, it's the envelope of the waveform that matters, not the individual cycles. I don't know. I don't pay much attention to absolute polarity, frankly. Obviously, the speakers have to be in phase with each other, but so we've done that. So let's do the same thing and see, because where I'm sitting, I could hear a difference, and I'd like to see that not be there.
Okay, so now we're on.
So now this is calibrated. What do you guys hear?
I like the bass better on the calibrated.
For sure, it's more fast.
I'm getting about 4 to 5 decibels higher reading on my crummy little RTA on the uncalibrated.
4 to 5.
4 to 5. It's around 88, 89, and the other one's 84, 85.
Wow, I don't hear a 5 dB difference where I'm sitting. Huh?
You took down that.
I did. All right, so probably a lot of that is in the low frequencies where we're less sensitive to the sound, but
Yeah, it's pretty compressed. There's hardly any man.
yeah.
But it is an iPhone.
Yeah, that's right. Brought down the bass quite a bit. That would account for a lot of that. Anyway, does it sound about the same, forgetting about what the meter, roughly the same volume between the two? I would think so. I think it's better than it was. Comments? You guys sitting in the middle, does the stereo get any better, or?
No, it's the bass.
It's the bass.
Much more integrated.
Okay.
The other one sounds like a boombox.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more integrated in the calibrated one than the uncalibrated one. I mean, I see the voice vocals almost disjunctive, but more forward.
Okay. Play something else. So, are we still not loud enough on the? All right.
Are those 192? No, just saying that the uncalibrated
Was louder. Yeah, well, I'll tell you, when I go to uncalibrated, I get overwhelmed by bass back there in the corner. It's like out of control a little bit, and now it's what?
It's like a massage.
Yeah.
Manny, when you're playing the mini DSP, what's the volume level? How many minus dB is it?
It's maxed.
I guess so the preamp is set to 0.
So it's 0 for the Manny mix. It's -1 for the Siegfried mix.
So it's,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. So we could bring down, but we can't bring up, and then you're just adjusting volume with Bluetooth over the phone, right? Yeah. Comments or anything? I think I'm about done with everything I've had to say. Questions? Fire away.
Okay, this is going to be kind of stupid because I don't understand it. You have a range on the mini DSP of say -60 to 0, right? So maybe 60 decibels where you can hear differential. -60 being hardly anything coming out, and then 0 where you're at max. Agreed?
Yeah, it's actually more than that. It's like 100 dB, 110 dB, or they like let you go to like
-100, probably you'd have to have your ears stepped against a tweeter to hear.
not even that. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so when you're doing these corrections and you're doing this -3 or 4 or 5, that reduces that range, right?
Reduces the range. You're talking about input. So you're talking about input gain, and now you're asking how bands of EQ within the frequency spectrum might affect overall volume.
Overall gain.
Overall, yes. Yeah, so any good system should have enough headroom to accommodate some amount of that. When you're working with digital systems, you do have to be, I mean, it's the same with analog for that matter. You have to be mindful of gain structure, right? So if I add 6 dB of boost at 100 hertz, let's say, right? And I play a track, some EDM dance thing, and it's got a huge amount of bass, and the mastering engineer let it go to 0 dB full scale, and the energy happens to be concentrated at 100 hertz where I added 6 dB. If I haven't pulled 6 dB out somewhere before then, I'm gonna I'm gonna run out of bits.
Yeah, I always turn on the clipping indicator on room. That's
Yeah.
indicator, and then I'll just adjust down the master.
That's right.
By 4 or 5 dB.
You got to bring it. Yeah, so I can't get into gain structure issues, but yes, you're not wrong. You have to be careful of that kind of thing. If you're adding a lot of EQ, you need to. This is why cut better than boost. You just sidestep these issues, but sometimes you just need to boost it a little bit, and especially if you're talking a dB, you're a couple of dB here, or something relatively narrow like we did. We didn't do anything crazy because the speakers are well behaved and the room is reasonable, right? Albeit with a little bit of extra reverb, but it's a good quality reverb for what it is. So we didn't have to run into that issue, but it is something to be mindful of. Anything else? Yeah.
Have you ever run across a certain loudspeaker design that it was just really hard to get dialed in, or conversely, have you ever had it?
No, never. They're all beautiful. I mean, they're really.
Have you ever had a company or loudspeaker design like, wow, I didn't have to do too much with this one. It was made pretty well.
Yeah.
What loudspeakers do you personally listen to at home?
I have my own prototypes. Yeah, so I have my own prototypes at home. When I tell clients to buy something, I will steer them if they're looking for like a good residential, like floor standing, nice piece of furniture kind of thing. Especially at the lower price points, I point them towards Paradigm. They do a really nice job, Canadian company. Mm-hmm. If it's pro, I steer them towards either a little less JBL than I used to, although my wife was setting up a home studio for $300. She got a pair of speakers that don't suck, but they're pro and they have blinky lights and they're cheap black boxes, but they sound fine and they have good performance for their price point for sure. At the higher end, I really like the best deal in loudspeakers is on the pro side because musicians ain't got no money. And, you know, and wood cabinets are expensive. Aluminum cabinets milled out of blocks of aluminum like Magico, expensive. Do you need it? No, but it's kind of nice. They look awfully pretty. And if you like that, you know, that's part of what you're paying for. So I steer people, I think Magicos actually do sound quite good. And but I really like Neumann. Yeah, Neumann studio monitors are like freaking killer, like $1,500 each or something, 2,000. What? Those are aluminum, that's right. But they're not, they're cast aluminum. They're not like, they're not milled out of giant, and they're awfully good. So that's the, you know, for if you want just a great pair of speakers, and you don't need them to, you don't mind that they look like studio monitors, because that's what they are. It's the best deal there is. 3-4 grand, and you've got a great, with the power and every, you know, their built-in power, everything is powered on that side.
And you like the Neumanns better than the Genelec?
I do. Genelecs are fine though. And Genelec has recently come out with a new model with a coaxial driver that I hear is very good. I haven't heard it yet.
They improved the bass.
Yeah, I guess. You know, Genelec has made, I've been a fan of Genelecs for a long time, but I mean, the Sennheisers are among the best I've ever measured and listened to, quite frankly. I did a bunch of trials. I actually got hired by a professional audio company to evaluate a range of those types of speakers in the, you know, $1,000 a piece kind of price point. And the Neumanns came out on top. And they were clearly used DSP inside, even though they didn't advertise it, because there's no way to get that kind of performance without.
Console top speakers, or they?
Yeah, they're bookshelf. Yeah, they're the kind of thing you'd put on the meter bridge of a recording console. They're, you know, so big. They make a 2-way and a 3-way, and you know, they're not big.
Computer speakers, if you're looking to.
Yeah. Oh, if you want something for, they're killer for that. But I mean, they'll fill your average. If you're listening at normal, like hobbyist level, and you're not cranking the heck out of them, they'll play plenty loud in your living room. Put them on some nice stands, and you know, away you go. Other brands on the consumer side, I'm just not that familiar with the.
Oh, Ravel.
I'm sorry?
Revell.
Revell. Oh, Revel. Yeah. I've been a big fan of theirs for a long time. A Harman company, poorly marketed, I think, sadly, because they make a great product.
Utopia's a great speaker.
Yeah, the really nice loudspeakers. Kevin, what's his last name? Vokes. Kevin Vakes. I think it's Vakes, but I'm not sure. Nice guy, a great loudspeaker designer, and big fan of Revel, yeah, which is one of the Harman brands. And quite frankly, you know, at the lower end of the price point for Harman, if you get into the JBL stuff, that's not too bad either. You know, they share a lot of the same resources. It's just the industry has pivoted away from loudspeakers. You know, it's all about headphones and portable Bluetooth audio, and it's a different world. You know, if you're into home theater, does anybody here a theater buff? And
Yeah, I got another salon range there.
Yeah.
And the Trinov, which is got that weird, but
Oh yeah, sure. The Trinov is that room correction system is just fine. Thank you very much.
quite good.
It's quite good.
Multiple versions of different companies.
Yeah, the Trinov room correction is quite good. Dirac isn't bad. My partner and I, we have a company. I'm less involved. I did all the loudspeaker design. It uses my patents. We have, if you look up Gormani Systems, you'll find my handiwork. And we make a range of cinema loudspeakers. So they're very utilitarian black boxes that are generally made to go either in or on the wall, and usually hidden by fabric, although you can buy grills. And they have a very unique waveguide of my design. And they're all 80 hertz boxes. So you always go to subwoofers. Highly recommend that. Rather than paying all that money for a full range loudspeaker, get a smaller loudspeaker and buy subwoofers, and then get them properly integrated. the devil is in the details on that last little bit properly integrated, because it's easy to have subwoofers not sound good. When I calibrate a room and I have a two-way speaker and subwoofers, it's like it becomes a three-way loudspeaker. Pristine response and in over quite a wide seating area if you do the multiple subwoofer thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have one subwoofer in my home theater environment from Paradigm, latest one. And the odd thing about it was you use a piece of software on your iPad or your iPhone to sort of fix it ready. And I turned on and calibrated the room with Trinov, and I sent the information back to the guys at Trinov, and they said, there's something wrong here. It should be different. It's somehow, and then I futzed around with one of the settings, and I found that the detent was like 10 dB off of where it should be for a normal room. And I mentioned it to the guys at Paradigm, and they didn't respond back to me.
Yeah, they probably got a resistor value wrong, and the switch doesn't do what it's supposed to. Yeah.
So in terms of getting a system like this set up in one's home,
Yeah.
does this need to be hooked up to a computer all the time?
No. I mean, I haven't hooked a computer up to I got all DSP and I haven't done it.
You have a DSP and then you use
set it and then I forget about it. Yeah, personally.
The items that you would need would be like a mini DSP, an interface, and then something that would allow you to have.
Yeah, you need microphone. You need microphones. Yeah. If you don't have multiple microphones, you need to move the mic. And make different measurements and then average it, which makes this whole process take a lot longer. Peter is like one of my best clients. And by the way, thank you for, Peter sponsored this event. This wouldn't be happening without Peter here. And I got sandwich and a coffee and no, much more than that. But at any rate, no, Peter and I have been working together for a long time, and it's that whole process of getting it set up in your room. I mean, he's pretty adept at this point of, getting in and out of the software and how to fix things and make measurements and verify, and I'll come over and we'll set some reference curves, and then every now and again, because, if you're a hobbyist, you want to play with your stuff.
Right.
See, I'm weird. I'm like the anti-audiophile. Get it right once. I don't want to know for the next 20 years what I did. I did it. It sounds good. What are you doing? And so that's just me. But if you want to play with it, then maybe you do buy a cheap PC and leave it set up, and you set up different presets and you listen, and maybe a little more brighter, and you can come up with different presets. And if you're listening to vinyl a lot, then you have much more to correct, because now you got to correct for the damn cartridge, right? Because they're all over the map. Yeah.
Just a question, as someone made an analog comment before, and
yeah,
analog is a very different world, but I think of the system I have at home, which is a 300 V2 band, massively ridiculous speakers. Am I chasing my tail if I try to do some DSP work there?
No, you do have to be careful with, tube amps. Not a fan. I love them for guitars because they're part of the instrument, but that's a different use case. If you're dealing with low-powered tube amps, they're very easy to overdrive. Now, if you have, a decent power output and you've paid attention to the impedance of the loudspeaker, and it doesn't get to very low, it's a relatively easy load to drive, then that can work just fine. And what I do in my mastering work is I will add tube distortion to a mixed song as part of the mastering process, rather than go for the bass EQ, because the effect is similar. So the event that we did at Leslie's last time, I demoed a whole suite of signal processing that you can add to give a little of that glow, a little of that width, all these different things, and it's really cool. I mean, it really is very cool. And but you'd have, in order to set something like that up, you'd have to have a dedicated computer running the right software. But you can do all these things. You don't need a tube amp anymore. You can model it in DSP quite well, thank you.
So how much computing power do you need?
Mac Mini and the right software. But that's a whole other thing. That's another presentation.
So just to be clear, once you have everything set up, all you really need is the mini DSP.
Yeah.
After you've got everything tweaked out.
Yeah. Yeah, so
playing track.
Yeah, so if you've got multiple turntables, for instance, and you've got a cartridge on one that's just a little brighter or duller or whatever, you can set up another preset in there and say, I want to play records on this turntable, but that tizziness that I always hear on, take care of it, or whatever the issue is. Right?
Yeah. But really, all you need is a mini DSP unit, which is really inexpensive. If you're dealing with multiple subwoofers, in my experience and my level of expertise, which is a little above zero, but not much. If you're dealing with multiple subwoofers, the phase is going to be really a bitch.
Right.
So you might as well save yourself a lot of frustration, give Manny over put in there, and then have him get the subs right. The rest of it is a dozen if you're only talking about 2 channels. But the subs, if you go for 4 subs like I did, that's.
Yeah, that really is, the level of complexity there is meaningfully higher than what we did here today in terms of getting that right. It wouldn't even really be practical to do an event like this. I'd have to set it up ahead of time and then go back and explain what I did. I couldn't do it in real time like we did this. Yes?
Are you familiar with Anthem's ARC?
Yes.
I have a 9.3.6 system up in my living room, and I use that to tune everything up, and I have 3 subwoofers.
Yeah.
And I thought I did a pretty good job.
They work. Those systems work reasonably well. They don't always. My experience is, to finish what my thought from earlier, I'm partners in a home theater company. We do high-end private screening rooms is really what we call them. And we make loudspeaker systems that, a small theater might be $70,000 with our amplifiers and speakers, and then go up from there, just to give you an idea of where we sit in the spectrum of price. We always spec in multiple subwoofers because if you're looking for high quality, but you can't do it any other way, not in the typical rooms that we have available to us. And then we would say that the automated calibration systems can get you very close very quickly. And if you're a hobbyist, probably just doing that and setting different target curves is a good way to go without ever blowing up your speakers or doing anything, getting too off in the weeds. And I've been to homes where the guy had gotten used to this sound, and if it didn't sound like this, it was all wrong. And if you think I'm kidding, let me promise you I am not. You can get your ear used to some really goofy stuff, and then, yeah. At any rate, but it's just like cooking. The recipe gets you so close, the master chef knows just the right amount of sauce, of salt, and exactly when to pull it off the stove, and it's those fine touches that separate a good chef from a truly great chef, and it's very much the same kind of thing with this. So to a certain point, I highly recommend those things. If you're trying to get a cut above that, there's not many guys that not to toot my own horn, but there are very few guys on the planet like my partner and I who have done this work for so long. And both of us, me in particular, have worked in production environments where, like, if it wasn't right, you didn't get hired again. So, so under those environments, and room design too. So it doesn't stop. I don't stop with loudspeaker design and loudspeaker calibration. I do entire recording studio design or theater design or home listening, any reference room, right? As a matter of fact, we started with the company with a client who wanted a dedicated room built ground up for audio listening. He had Magico loudspeakers, and he loved us so much he funded the loudspeaker company. So yeah, it was pretty cool. Anything, I think you guys should get a chance to listen, and I'm going to start packing up because we're okay on time though, right?
Oh, yeah, we're great.
Yeah, we're good. I would like you guys to get a chance to listen because I know that that's important to you, and you should get to hit the button on and off and listen to what you want and cycle through the seats, and I can make myself available in the back if anybody wants to have a chat. But I think unless anybody, any other last questions while I'm still standing on here in front?
Put the plexiglass cover on it.
Yeah, crank it up.
Jim, if like Manny says, I have a Neumann system with the Neumann 310, which is their only model that's sealed. It's a three-way. Like he said, quite reasonable. It's set up for Aero 3D, but I do play a lot of 2-channel plus the 4 subwoofers. If anybody wants to see it, I'm over in San Rafael, and after I get back at the end of the month, at the end of April, I'd be happy to have anybody come over and listen to it.
Yeah, he's got really quite a nice system of this type that I described. Really cost effective and quite high quality. I mean, like stunningly. Much better than places I've been to where there were total megabuck loudspeaker systems. Yeah, there's a complete disconnect between what things cost and what they really sound like, in my experience.
Yeah, I just went through that because I've had spectral gear for many years. And one of my amps has gone back for the third time to spectral. I don't expect to ever see it again.
Yeah.
Because of the status of that company. So
Yeah.
I put in, first as I thought was going to be just a sort of a backup pair of amplifiers from Mike Moffett and Scott, called a shit tier. They're just over $3,000 a pair, and they're sounding right now quite good in my system.
Yeah, if it's competently designed, done, and
match the impedance. I mean, you have to go through all those other.
Yeah, you got to get you got to get it right, and I have a particular bone to pick around tweaky cable design. Because a lot of those very expensive cables have very odd impedance curves. You know, they can introduce a lot of capacitance between the amplifier and the speaker, and that is not doing you any favors. I mean, seriously. And what I love about all my speaker designs are active. That means the output of the amplifier is connected directly to the terminals of the driver, and there's no capacitance or inductance twixt the two. And that's a big deal. First of all, even a simple crossover is burning 3 dB of your power output. How much is 3 dB? In percent. It's a half. So best case, you're losing half your amplifier power to warm up the capacitors and inductors and resistors in the cross, and it can easily be more like 75% of the power that actually gets through to the driver. Secondarily, the output devices of the amplifier can't, talk directly to and control the motion of the cone because you've got a filter in between. And so what I have found is that the quality level just goes through the roof when you connect the amplifiers. You give each driver its individual channel, right, like we have here. And amplifiers have gotten cheap. Good switch mode amps, and I'll tell you what, switch mode amps are better sounding in the bass than anything else. And if you want a little more bloat from like a tube amp, add a little more 60 hertz. You'll get a little of that. I mean, you can play with it. And you can also, like I say, if you want to take it to the next level, that computer that's in the tape loop of your preamp, which would be the place to put it, you can get other bits of software that mimic tube amp distortion. Dial in as much as you want. Then it sounds cool. I like it, So you can even get plugins that mimic the sound of vinyl. How much record warp do you want? How much noise do you want? How many clicks and pops do you want? And you can just dial it in. You can, and I'm not kidding, right? Tone arm resonance do you want from like the 70s or the 50s, sound, because they got better. All right.
Software that adjusts VTA.
Yeah. It's all adjustable and it's shockingly good is the thing. Anyway, with that, go ahead and play some stuff. I'm going to pack up, and I'll be available for questions in the back. Thank you. Thank you all. And thank you, Peter.